program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available where Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. This program is for educational purposes only. The statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Testimonials are shared as individual experiences of the individual sharing their testimony. Results vary and may not be typical. We do not make any claims regarding health or income. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We are honored to have a founding father of the science of epigenetics guiding us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach. Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. This program is for educational purposes only. The statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Testimonials are shared as individual experiences of the individual sharing their testimony. Results vary and may not be typical. We do not make any claims regarding health or income. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We are honored to have a founding father of the science of epigenetics guiding us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. My name is Becca Dukes. So happy to have you here with us. And for those of you who are watching us on the live stream, we are actually live in Zoom Monday through Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific time. And you're welcome to join us at zoom.dailywithdoc.com. lifeblood.com. Now, one of the biggest advantages of being here live with us is one, you can raise hands and ask questions about what the speaker of the day is bringing to the table and sharing with us. And two, you can have the chat open and actually see notes that are being taken, as we have amazing co-hosts who do transcription and dictation and puts it in the chat so that you can take a picture of it or a screenshot of it and then take it to your health coach and say, hey, this is what I need, or this is what I want to get started on, or what would be the best options for me to help me with my health issues and get on a better health journey. So folks, we do take a naturopathic look at life. Now, that goes beyond just the body and what we put in our mouths, because we look at the environment and all the different toxicities around us that can be affecting our health. Today, we're going to be looking at water. So I'm super excited as we have Dr. Judy Reynolds, who is going to be presenting today. So if you were invited by somebody specific, make sure that you get back with that individual and tell them thank you for sharing this program with you, because they cared enough about you to share it, return the favor, and care enough about saying thank you. And for those that found our program, they have never tried any of the recommendations that we make on this program, and nobody referred you, we do have a call team. If you have questions at 855-949-3377, this call team is made up of certified holistic health coaches. Many of them are also in a certification course to become a naturopathic practitioner. So I'm super excited to be able to surround my community and put them in good hands, as we are a resource for an amazing community of individuals who are health coaches, certified holistic health coaches, doctors, massage therapists, aromatherapists. We even have psychologists and psychiatrists, folks, and even retired oncology surgeons. So if you have been trying to find answers and your current approach is not quite working the way you hope it would, take a look at naturopathic medicine, as it is a game changer, going back to how our bodies were designed and using food as medicine and micronutrition. So sit back and get ready for a great show. Like I said, we're going to be talking about water. Before I forget, this program is being sponsored by dailywithdoc.com. On our website, you can find a place where you can sign up for our email address. This is for our email list. This is for anybody and everybody, so that you can have delivered right to your email reminders of our program coming up, and also links to previous programming. If you save it all in a folder, you can do a simple search and find exactly what you're looking for, based maybe beneficial to you as an individual or somebody you know. So we hope that you share. If you're watching on a platform where you can subscribe, hit that subscribe button, show us some love by doing some thumbs up, and let us know that you are there by doing a comment in the comments. So the first thing I want to know with that comment is, how did you hear about us? Let us know. And then tell us where you're joining us from. So we are reaching people around the world, and we want to know the extent of that. So if there is an option to do so, please do so. And if you'd like to email us and you have questions, it's questions@dailywithdoc.com. And if you'd like to have more information about helping us with this crusade, you can email at info@dailywithdoc.com. But remember, the person that referred this program to you, they are your person and first point of contact. Now, again, my name is Becca Dukes, and here on Daily with Doc, I am excited to welcome to the show Dr. Judy Reynolds. Dr. Judy is going to be discussing topics that are essential for living things, all living things, folks. So she is renowned and expert in the animal physiology, and her research focuses on the role of nutrients within the animal kingdom, but it directly links over the human kingdom, as we are mammals and she loves mammals. So function of water in the animal kingdom can teach us a lot about its importance in life in general. We'll be taking a deep dive into Dr. Judy's fascinating work and exploring the concept of water and how, we're thirsty for life. And without water, folks, we don't thrive like we should. So her insights on how water impacts everything from animal behavior and the very foundation of cellular function is intriguing. So she does this deep dive, folks. So whether you're a health enthusiast, you're simply curious about the natural world, this episode promises to be both informative and eye-opening. So let's give Dr. Judy Reynolds a warm welcome. Hello, Dr. Judy. How are you today?
Hi, Becca. I'm great and so glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you as well. We always get lots of comments and emails saying, we love Dr. Judy. When is she going to be on again? So I'm excited that we're able to bring to the world your research and knowledge and share with them more on a regular basis now in the year 2025. So let's talk about water, Dr. Judy. You have multiple degrees. You've taught at multiple different levels, whether it's preschool all the way to graduate students. And there's something that just is part of life that we all need to thrive, and water is one of them. So please take us deeper into the importance of water, would you please?
I'll be glad to, Becca. Okay, so when we think of water, if we are trying to find a place in space, not on planet Earth, that we might want to live, we're trying to see if there's water there. We've checked for water on Mars. We've tried to figure out just by running spaceships and things around as far as we can, looking for signs of water, because that means potential life. And also here on planet Earth, we are trying to find out where can people or animals live on this planet? Where is the water? Why is it so important? Because we are about 70% water, more when we're younger, a little bit less when we're older. But water is an interesting molecule. It is composed of two hydrogen atoms, and they're the smallest atoms. They only have one proton and one electron. And we give them a +1 as far as valence, because the inner electron shell around every nucleus of an atom is trying to have 2 electrons. So since it's only got one, it's looking for another, and it likes to bond, called an ionic bond, with other molecules. And it just so happens that oxygen has another shell on the outside of that, and it is missing 2 electrons there. So the way it works is that the two hydrogens can go in and let the oxygen use their 2 electrons, and you have this bond of water. But the other thing that's amazing about water is that it's polar, because that bond, it's not in a straight line, it's at an angle. So you'll have an oxygen side of the molecule and you'll have a hydrogen side of the molecule. So any other positive molecule is going to try to attach to the negative side of the water. And the same thing happens with other hydrogen molecules. So they will form into groups. They don't want to stay up by themselves. They want to form into groups and share those electrons. And something that's fascinating, and as I've been researching this topic the last week, I have gone back and found, even back to a video that I saw in 2015, they were already talking about a new phase of water. And I've got 2 books specifically on that. And what they're talking about now is that we all knew when we grew up that it's obvious we have liquid water that we drink. We know that water evaporates into the air and becomes steam. And then we also know that water freezes and becomes ice. So basically, we know we had those three phases, but people who study chemistry a lot more than I did have always said, but there's something missing because some of the properties of water just don't make much sense. Well, what they've decided now, and it's fascinating, think about water when it's in our cells. There are certain things that are happening in those cells. There are other molecules and they are pushing against each other. And what happens is along the membrane, what is called gel water forms because it's got more of the consistency of raw egg white. And it actually forms inside the cells. Now, remember, these cells are very tiny. We have trillions of them in our body. But within these cells, these tiny water molecules are acting like a gel. And one of the fascinating things to me about that is it's possible that water will have a memory of things that have been around it. In which case, if we've lost something about our genetics or anything about the makeup of our body, if we learn more about water and this gel phase, we might literally be able to help us get back to health, back to the best way we're supposed to be. So a fascinating new development, at least for those of us who don't do it all the time. I mean, that it's probably old for them. But just again, just the whole concept of water. When I was first learning biology, they told us there are all these characteristics of it. It has surface tension. So if you look at the top of a glass of water, the water is going up against gravity. Just all these different things that water can do. And so, yes, we need it for life. So everywhere we're looking, plants, animals, us, that's what it is. It's a big deal. So let's go into some more detail. And what I'm going to do in this talk is my background, as most of you know, is horses. And so I did most of my research projects in horses. However, I've been trained in both human and animal nutrition for pretty much my whole life. But the concept of what water is going to do is amazing because with racehorses, we know we have extremely fast starts. We have an extremely fast animal. And the changes that happen within those horses, one of my projects was with racehorses, and there were quarter horses and they run extremely fast at a 440 yard, which is a quarter of a mile, where the quarter horse thing comes from. But as I go through the slides, I'm going to show you how some things that happen in horses are very intense, and yet that helps teach us about what happens with us, even with our athletes, and even people who are, less athletic, sedentary, we might call it, or you might call it the librarians. I'm kind of a librarian scientist myself. But as I go through these, that's what I'm going to be looking at. And I hope that will help everybody just be able to tie in. I've always found that comparing things makes them easier to understand. And so that's what I'm looking at there. Okay, I got to move one thing so that I can get my slides working here. All right, zoom. I have to move zoom a little bit. So here we go, 1 second. All right, there we go. Okay. So when we think of energy, which is what is going to allow us to do everything we do, to breathe, to move, to all parts of things that we do as human beings or as other animals, what they do, all the original energy is from the sun. And the sun is so extremely hot that big molecules, that's how we get all these very heavy molecules in the periodic table. I'm going to show you that in a minute. All those things are created, nuclear reactions and everything that create the heavier molecules happen on the sun. But our plants, our green plants, do something called photosynthesis. You may have heard that that's how it works. and they are able to capture energy from the sun. And that, what do they add to it? Water and carbon dioxide, and they do photosynthesis. So then we get oxygen, which we breathe, animals breathe, and then we also get sugars, which are actually storage molecules. That's what sugars are. And the bonds within the atoms of the molecules, those bonds can be broken and allow that energy to come out to do work. So we're transferring energy from the sun, picking it up with plants, using it for our energy. And then we also have to keep in mind something people may not think about is that plants, when there is no sunlight shining on them at night, they also do respiration. They do the opposite. So they are the same as animals without the sun. And this becomes, the whole thing becomes obvious that if without the sun and without the earth being the perfect place, the perfect distance from the sun, we would not be able to be here. So hugely important. We're trying to get the energy to our body so we can do our work, and we're doing it this way. Okay, and I wanted to bring up the periodic table just so people can tie together these things. Periodic table just talks about the elements and how heavy they are. Hydrogen, it has 1 proton and it has 1 electron. And again, there's that shell that holds that 1 electron wants another electron. It's trying to get another one. So it's happy to bond with something over on this side of the table. And these things are missing electrons. So they want to grab hydrogen and bond with it. And these things have positive charges. Oxygen happens to have a charge of +2, which means it can easily bond with 2 hydrogens, and we have water. But all of these other elements have more and more and more protons and neutrons in the center, in the nucleus, and then electrons around them. And that's how we get all these things. This one is relatively old. It's only got 102. And I bet there are 150 now that they're recognizing as elements. Okay, so some functions of water, just kind of quickly. And again, I'm going through some of these on slides with horses, for horses, but then I'm going to put people and horses back and forth and talk about differences. So just to get the picture, if a 1,100-pound horse is 70%, that's a lean adult horse, that's 90 gallons of water within that horse. And that'll relate to when we talk about percentages of dehydration that can cause loss of function and things like that. We know that we need it for digestion. I've got a cool graphic coming up where it shows how the water circulates in the horse, because water from the blood goes into saliva, and then, so the digestive tract, the food is wet enough, but then we reabsorb some of that water from the colon of us, or well, pretty much the same in a horse, and we get that water back so that we're not losing all that water that we use. We'd have to drink a lot of water if we lost all of it and couldn't reabsorb it. We also need it for body temperature regulation, and that has to do with sweating. I've got some interesting facts about sweating coming up. And then it's a solvent. As I said, things dissolve in it. So all these chemical reactions, they have to have a place to be to dissolve. It does that. It lubricates our joints, very important, so that we can get around, especially for a horse. When they start losing joint function, then movement is their thing. That's what they want to do. It also cushions our central nervous system, even though our brain and nerves are mostly made of fat. But we need water also there, so everywhere. And our senses, especially sight, hearing, taste, feel, all these things, water plays a part in all of it. Okay, and here we go with the circulation of water in the digestive tract. This is a horse. So we start with our esophagus. And if we're doing dry feed for a horse, it's about 11% water. That would be hay or feed made of grains, soybean hulls, those kinds of things. They're about 11% water when they swallow them. If it's grass, it's about 70% water. So from the time the horse chews it till it gets to the stomach, where it's going to be right here, water from the blood to the GI tract. And what happens then is when the blood loses the water, they get thirsty a half an hour after the meal. Something that was brought up recently in a question is, well, should we drink water with our meals? We don't want to dilute, this and that. Yes, we should drink water. It allows us to have to make less saliva, even though we do want enzymes and things that are in saliva. But we don't want to be trying to swallow things that are not properly chewed and are just dry, because we can actually choke, and so can animals. So yes, we do want liquids while we're consuming our foods. Okay, so then what's happening up here, it goes through the stomach. I'm going to show you the stomach in more detail too, and show you what happens with horses all the time is that they'll have water in front of them, but they won't drink. They're not thirsty. But as soon as they eat, then a half an hour or so after they eat, especially if they're given a feed meal rather than hay, they will go and drink water right then. And people say, oh, that must be bad because the water will go straight through. I'll show you why it doesn't with a diagram of the stomach in just a minute. Okay, so the digest is 87 to 95% water as it goes through this small intestine. And this is very similar to us at our digestive system. Esophagus, stomach, small intestine, all of that is very much the same. Right here is where it starts to be very different, because this cecum, this huge vat, is where a lot of bacteria live that break down the forage part of the feed. And with us, this is literally our appendix. Our appendix is a tiny little thing about that long, but it's located right here in a human. It just comes off like a little tiny thing right here. And then we go straight to the, again, similar organs with the large colon, small colon, and rectum and stuff. So the horse is vastly adapted to eat that grassy based diet. The majority, 90% for most horses, should be eating grass. So as I said, up here, we are going to get 96% of our sodium chloride, 75% of our potassium and phosphate are going to be absorbed back into these larger components of the digestive system, back into the bloodstream, so they can be used again. And without that, we would have to drink a lot of water, and we would have very runny feces or manure in a horse. Okay. And this just shows that we do still have quite a bit of water in fecal balls in horses, because 58 to 63% of water is still there. So they're not dry. Again, they have to be able to go through. Everything has to be able to go through. So that just shows us how important the water cycle is and kind of what's going on. Now, here's my diagram of the horse stomach. And the key thing here to notice is that in horses, the esophagus comes in, and it's not shown here, but the esophagus comes in very close to where it goes to the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. So they're right next to each other. So the water comes in and it literally goes right out into the small intestine. So it does not interfere with what's happening in the stomach. But here's another thing. When we were talking about pH in the past and why it's so important that we have a high acidic or low pH stomach, here's what happens with a horse. At the top, from here up, you have what's called a non-glandular or squamous epithelium. Nothing is in there. It would be space for gas or room. And this is a really good thing, because if for some reason a horse overate, or there were imbalances in the electrolytes in the stomach, and they ate too much, their stomach would have nothing to do but explode. A horrendous situation. Obviously, they couldn't survive it. So there is actually this area up here, okay? So there's nothing there. There's no pH there. But then as we go down, what happens is a low density mat, which is pH 6 or 7, little bit more acidic than water, 10, same as water or 10 times more, is up here. Then that lower down, we get a medium density mat, pH 4 to 5. Okay, pH 7, 6 is 10 times more acidic, 100 times more acidic, 1,000 times more acidic, 100,000 times would be 3, and 1,000,000 times 2, and 10 million. I mean, this is how acidic everything is here. So it's important for all our minerals to be absorbed and all those kinds of things. And this just shows you, now our stomachs are not the same. Our esophagus comes in from the top and we go out to the small intestine at the bottom, but we are not eating all these mats of fibrous material. So it's different in that way. But we still have, peristalsis and all those other things are relatively the same. Okay, and I wanted to throw this one in too, so people can get an idea. And how much this affects humans, I'm not sure, but because of the way the stomach is in the horse and the way the pH is graded like that with the content of the digesta, in an exercising horse, what happens is the abdominal muscles contract, sometimes even in the anticipation of exercise, and for sure at the faster gaits, meaning galloping, racing, not necessarily trotting. The stomach actually gets compressed by those abdominal muscles. So this high density liquid from the bottom of the stomach, which is extremely acidic, can be pushed up into that empty area at the top. And that's where horses get ulcers, up in that top area, because of this movement with exercise. And so ulcers are a big problem in racehorses and some performance horses. And so that's something they've been dealing with for a very long time. And they have to do things to get rid of the stomach acid. They may have to use things like omeprazole, which can be detrimental for people because we need more, we still need to digest that food. But during the exercise, if this is happening, we may have to be able to keep that area from getting an ulcer. Okay. And here's another thing I want to compare. It's so fun comparing horses and people because this is chewing movements in horses. And a horse has a natural instinct to know that they have to chew their food. They shouldn't be trying to swallow it when they're not ready. And I mean, there are extreme cases where horses have been starved and they may just not even have this correct instinct. But for the average typical horses, if they're eating, okay, I gotta orient myself here. Chewing movements per kilogram of concentrate, 800 to 1,200 chewing movements. That's a long time. For long hay, it's more. It's 3,000 to 3,500. Okay, that's a lot. Think about how little we chew. Sometimes we grab something, we're running around and we're chewing it once or twice. Ponies, it gets even worse because they're smaller. So they chew 5,000 to 6,000 chewing movements per kilogram. So chews per minute, 73 to 92 chews per minute in long hay. So 1.5 to 2 times a second, they're chewing their food if you watch them. Okay. And just for interest, 2/3 of the hay particles, if the horse has sound teeth, and that means a good grinding surface, they have to have their teeth worked on by dentists to keep that grinding surface, because it's a flat grinding surface. It's very important. So you can see less than 1 millimeter, that's pretty small. And then most things are 1.6 millimeters. You can look at the feces of a horse. And if you're seeing big fiber particles, you need to check dentistry, and there may be something else you need to do. Maybe you need to process the hay or something like that more, so that would help. Okay. Just general concepts again that are basically for horses because they're animals outside. What's going to affect how much they're going to drink? Environmental temperature and humidity, obvious, makes sense. Water quality, I'll talk about in a minute, because we worry about dissolved solids in water that's out in nature, in ponds and lakes and all kinds of things. Even in wells, we can worry about what might be in there. So we also need to know the size and workload of the horse. Are they making milk? Again, what's the temperature of the water they're drinking? There's also the environmental temperature. How far is the water away from the feed? We had a question about that a week or a couple weeks ago. That you can go back and check that one. And then salt and mineral consumption is going to be a big deal there too. So these are all things we're looking at. And here are some requirements. We got to remember that in horses and people, we are going to have water supplied to us through our grass for horses and our vegetables for people, and through feed and food. There is water in varying amounts in different things. So keep that in mind. And a horse is going to consume in a moderate temperature, 70, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. Horses will consume 6 to 10 gallons of water a day. We should keep track of that. We should monitor it. And another interesting thing here, and it's part of that reason why horses won't drink before their meal. They wait till they got the food in, and they get thirsty when their blood is lower in water. There is a correlation between feed intake and water intake, which I'll show you why in a second. So 1 or 2 quarts of water per pound of feed. And then again, water quality is important. Total dissolved solids, we want less than 1,000 parts per million. Now remember, 1,000 parts per million. So it's 1,000 seems like a lot, but there are 6 more zeros in there to get to 1 million. Okay. And just so people know, you're going to have 7,000 parts per million. Not good. Not good for growth or performance or health. So those are things to be looking at. Okay, here's the fun thing. Why do we need water according to the amount of food we are digesting and breaking down? Because when we start, let's say we're going to build a disaccharide. Okay, we're going to start with 2 sugars. Here we have 2 sugars. Doesn't matter that much which one. We're going to take one of the hydrogens off of one of these, and we're going to take an OH off of here. We're going to remove them, and this oxygen is, and that water's coming out. And that is called dehydration synthesis. So every time we build a molecule in our body, that's one of the main ways we do it, is we take a little bit, an OH off of one molecule, an H off the other molecule, take the water out, and then the water goes to do something else. Fascinating. And then that's to build something. So we do the absolute opposite if we're going to take something apart, right? So in order to put that, we have to have that water to put it in to this molecule to separate it back out and have it become 2 molecules again. So you can see how that water is crucial in everything we build: anabolism, the build part of metabolism, or catabolism, taking apart part of metabolism. Another key thing with water. Water fascinates us everywhere. Okay, let's look at some water requirements for work. Huge thing here. In high temperature and humidity, we're talking horses here, 30 to 40 gallons per day. And I'll go into more detail on this next one again, these slides kind of build on each other. A 3% dehydration, you don't necessarily notice, but it decreases performance. We can't have these racehorses dehydrated. One of the things that people use to try to have horses run faster is called Lasix. It's a diuretic. It removes water from the body. Can be dangerous because we can't have dehydration in these horses when they're running. 12% dehydration, I'd say, is life-threatening. And another thing with lactation, obviously, they're making milk, which is 70-some% water. They're going to have, again, 30 to 40 gallons. So both our very hardworking racehorses and our mares can need 3 times as much as they did when they were just standing around. Okay, so water content, 65-75% of the body weight of the horse. again, 90 gallons. In a foal, they have a little more percent of water. Water loss, this is horses, I'll show you people in a little while. 18% of the water loss is in urine, 51% in feces, and 31% insensible loss. That is through respiration, because there is water in our breath as we breathe it in and out. And the other part of it is when we sweat, that sweat is there for a purpose, because when it evaporates, it pulls heat away from the body. In order for that water to change from liquid sweat on our skin to go into the air, it's going to pull heat from the body, which is how we cool. Otherwise, we would get too hot. And just a fun one I'll throw in here is, if you guess what stops a racehorse, why do they stop running? Whether it's the end of the race or not, why do they stop running? Most people would say they're too tired, they ran out of energy, they ran out of glycogen, one of those things. But the actual thing that stops a racehorse is heat, body temperature. Because think about it, we're much narrower and smaller. They are much bigger. They have a huge muscle mass, and that heat builds up. And if it builds up high enough, they would die. Their tissues would be denatured like cooking an egg. And so that's the huge thing that we fight with exercise. I did my research in Texas in the middle of the summer. It was very hot. Normal temperature for a horse is 101 degrees. And one of the racehorses on my project got up to 108. He was fine. He had no problems. But what we do is we immediately cool them. We pour water on them so they don't have to waste time and energy sweating. And we offer them water immediately because they will be thirsty. We will offer them water that is warm, not freezing cold, but that is warm. But we don't limit their water. And there's actually been a belief forever, and people think it goes back to the book Black Beauty. There was a scene in Black Beauty where the horse had to save or get the doctor somewhere to save a person, and the horse ran really fast, got really sweaty, and then it colicked after that, and they blamed it on someone who gave the horse cold water. Not true. That is not true. And so, or even too much water all at once, not true. The sooner you change the temperature within those cells, the better it is to save the life and save the cells. So we need to get that water in there as much as we can. And again, we pour water on them to make sure they're okay. So, and just so everybody knows, I never had any issues with sickness, injury, death, any of them with the horses I was working with. Thank goodness, because I didn't have 100% control of that, of course. Okay. So again, for horses, water loss from the body, talked about most of those. Human, same kinds of things. That's kind of a general one. What happens when we're deficient in water? What causes a water deficiency? Sometimes, I mean, the water's not available. Well, maybe it's not there. Maybe someone forgot to fill the water tank. Maybe there just isn't water. But a big one that people need to realize is competition. When you have a group of horses out there together, they're competing with each other. And your boss horse sometimes will even guard the water and try to keep other horses away. If this happens, you need to separate them or do something else. But my horses, and a lot of horses I know, when it's hot, they will go, you'll go out and you'll fill the water tank, and they'll go out there and they'll put their nose in it and they'll splash every bit of water they can out of that tank. Because guess what? It feels good. They're throwing water on themselves. But then they don't have water that they need to drink. So you got to keep an eye on those horses. And then frozen, you know, it all in the upper parts of the country or the world. I grew up in Minnesota, lived there till I was in my 30s. And a lot of people up there believe that horses could live on snow. It's possible, but they wouldn't be healthy, and they'd be probably skin and bones, and then they don't have enough heat. So it just doesn't happen. It takes your body a lot of energy to thaw that frozen water. And then water is only, ice is only 10% or less water. So does not work. And then TDS we're going to do in a second. And all the salts affect thirst. More on that also coming. Okay, so here's our total dissolved solids. I'm not going to do a lot on this, but the slide is there if people want to go back and look at it. Total dissolved solids for livestock, less than 1,000 recommended, 1 to 3,000 parts per million, maybe okay. 3 to 5,000, you start having animals refuse it, and you may have some temporary diarrhea. 5 to 7,000 parts per million, do not allow that for pregnant and lactating animals. And upper safe, whatever. It's just something to be aware of to make sure. I personally don't let my animals ever drink out of wild sources of water, ponds, and those kinds of things, because they are not clean water. They're not good. Too many issues can happen. So we always fill tanks. We're lucky to have a well, and so that kind of thing. But just too many bad things can happen. Now, realize that the wild animals, the deer and everything, are out there drinking those ponds. So, to some extent, animals can do that. But with livestock, it's just giving us a worse outcome. So we don't have to worry about it. So for quality of water, total dissolved solids, coliforms,